This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by the Genesis Company, coming at you Wednesday morning. It's January 3rd, and I've got Jace Frederick here from the Pioneer Press. Wolves play the Pelicans this evening, and it's another game against a big opponent, which has just been an interesting time in the schedule, Jace, where the Wolves, these last few games, they played the Knicks, and before that, they played the Lakers, two bigger teams. Pelicans big as well tonight, and then kind of right before that, they play Dallas, the Thunder, and the Kings. Three teams who kind of play smaller, faster, or like not weak necessarily, but their goal is not to out physical you. Their goal is to kind of beat you with speed and the size that they have. And I think it's interesting because, the Wolves lose to one of those bigger teams in the Knicks, and they beat the Lakers, another big team. They lose to the Thunder, a small team, but they beat the Kings. And I remember thinking after the Lakers game, just to myself, I'm like, what's best for this team right now? And I don't think I really know the answer to that. And I don't think you need to know that. Maybe we'll figure that out with time. But I'm trying to figure out what the advantages and disadvantages are for this team versus a bigger team and a smaller team. So I wanted to start with that today. But first, hi, how are you? Happy Wednesday.
Oh, happy Wednesday. I was wondering if I got to talk on this podcast.
No,
we're 100 seconds in, and it's been the Dane Moore. I guess it is called the Dane Moore NBA podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. You go ahead. Oh, go ahead. Don't stop. Don't let me stop you.
This was like Jason Britt had a little fight in the scrum yesterday when we were at practice. And Britt and Jace both have very loud voices when we interview the players and coaches. So I always wait till the end. And you guys just both right at each other. Finch called you out on it, Jace. So I don't know. I'm just saying.
That was. I mean, Britt is. I'm actually impressed. I think I might be the first person who's ever Britt started talking, and I talked, and Britt stopped talking.
Yeah.
Usually, and the thing is, because Britt can't really hear. So my voice is loud, and I'm right next to him.
Yeah.
So when Britt starts talking and I start talking, he actually heard me talking. Where we have some pretty legendary post game scrums where somebody's asking a question, but they're on the other side of the scrum. Britt can't hear him at all. So Britt starts asking a question and he's just going and the two they might be both going for 3 or 4 seconds, but Britt's not going to stop because he can't hear the other person talking. Right. So it's pretty legendary. So I felt pretty good that he stopped talking, that he's seated to me. Yeah, which is I don't think ever happened.
It just goes, do you always do this, Jace?
Yeah, I was
go listen to everybody. Go listen to the
yeah, it's on YouTube
practice. It's somewhere on there.
It's on the Wolves YouTube page. Yeah.
But anyways, would you like to talk about the Timberwolves or no?
No, I'd love to.
Okay.
I'd love to. Yeah, okay. I was just waiting for you to be done.
Yes. So my thinking is let's just go through it. Advantages versus big teams, disadvantages versus big teams. Should we start there? You're playing a big team. What are the advantages? And the first one I wrote down is one that you've been very on for a long time, particularly with Cat. Is just the ability when Cat is guarded by a center, he can cook that. And oftentimes that's what's happening when you're playing a bigger team, right? It's two traditional bigs. I was just kind of looking at it. Some of the best performances that the Wolves have had this year are against teams with two traditional bigs. So Cat's just kind of in that position to be able to blow by the guy that is guarding him. So that's one of the that I had that I'm sure I'm stealing from you.
Yeah, I had that as well. It always it's if people play it traditionally, it works out like that, right? And then it's just, but then you have the Pelicans tonight, and we'll see who plays for them and whatnot. Second half of a back-to-back, they didn't play that many minutes, but that doesn't often matter for if you're gonna play or not. But it's certain guys, if you stay big, then Cat can kind of cook it, but then the Pelicans can kind of go a Trey Murphy or Herb Jones and kind of do the wing thing and slide off on other people. So that one is, I think at its core, very traditional sense, a big advantage for Cat is when he can be guarded by centers. That's really good for him. Some teams have kind of switched off of that either way. They won't really allow it to happen.
We always note when it does happen, right? We're why are they, why are they doing this? Why is this the choice that they're choosing to have there, because I mean, to Cat's credit, I think he's gotten even better at it over time, and he doesn't. And now it's kind of like when he sees it, he knows he's
Salivates.
right.
Yeah.
He's going at it, and not
Finally.
yeah. It's not in the like I'm gonna get a charge sort of way. It's like I'm actually gonna get around you, and it's the if you just I don't know. I'm sure if we just pulled up like Cat highlights from this year, the majority of them would have a bigger, slower footed player behind him that he's blown by there. So that's kind of the main one, I think for this team. And then Nas, I would throw into that too. Like he can also kind of take advantage of some of those bigger front courts there. What else did you have?
I put in there that like certain guys like Rudy can kind of neutralize.
Mhm.
It was kind of because like it's like big versus small, but it so often does depend on like the actual personnel and
Yeah.
what the teams do. Like you can be big, but do you play through your bigs? Are your
Mhm.
bigs just like a rebounding size thing?
Yeah.
I think it's like when you have like a traditional big like a Valanciunas or somebody like that, like he's relentless, but like that's where like if he's trying to be aggressive, like going at Rudy, I think that's advantage Wolves.
Mhm.
That kind of thing. Like you'll take that over other things. So that's what I put in there is like it if that is a strength of the other team, then Rudy's a pretty good neutralizer for it.
I just did simple rank of best defensive rating performances of the season for the Wolves, and it's all against big teams. Miami, that game when they started Kevin Love, also next
Yep.
to Bam, went double big.
And Bam had a hard, like he
Yeah,
scored, but it was a lot of tough shots.
that was the best defensive rating game for the Wolves, defensive game of the season. Denver, it's also double big. Utah was the next best after that. New Orleans was another good one. I think that was the no Zion Messi game,
Yeah.
but in
Yeah.
general, like a team with still a big ethos. And then San
Valanciunas might have
Antonio,
still played in that game.
I think he
I think
did.
he
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
He
It's
did.
like it was
Yeah.
like Valanciunas and Bi and
And that was
Larry
about
Nance
it.
or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think that does bear out generally that the Wolves, to your point, can guard other big teams well. I don't go into a matchup against a big team super concerned about it, unless now what is kind of coming up, and maybe this is a way to transition into disadvantages versus a big team, is this Randall and Zion idea that's
Right.
really has been interesting, right? These last few games is what is the best way to match up with and slow down for the Timberwolves a big playmaking scoring for like Julius Randle or Zion Williamson. And I think right now we probably put that in as a disadvantage for the Wolves versus a big team, is being able to guard that. What did you just kind of, I mean, we haven't talked since the Knicks game. What do you think about that idea, and tonight against Zion too? Like how can this team slow down that type of scoring for?
Yeah, what's tough is like I don't think those guys are not necessarily like just trying to get to the rim on you. Like so it's not like you're just like Carl can defend them and then they feed into Rudy. Like
Mhm.
Zion certainly doesn't mind getting to the rim. Julius Randle doesn't mind getting to the rim, but like they're also very comfortable in like the 8-foot range or so. So like Rudy doesn't have to like they can kind of just avoid Rudy.
Yeah.
And that might make their shots a little bit tougher. But so basically though, what it comes down to is Rudy doesn't necessarily super involved in the play. And it just kind of is like it's a lot of one-on-one, like Zion versus whoever, Julius Randle versus Cat, and like if Cat's like the one-on-one defender for a lot of these things, like he might force him into a tougher shot, but still like it's just not it's maybe like your worst defender on the floor,
Mhm.
who's getting attacked relentlessly. And I think that's kind of one of the bigger challenges of it. Like, cause I don't think you're going to put Rudy on Julius Randle, like he's going to bring him out. He's going to pull him out to the
Yeah.
perimeter, like, and Zion is going to do the same thing and then probably then drive at him with a full head of steam. And that's just not like Rudy can handle that, but you don't want that possession after possession. So I think it's just like it's just the Wolves don't have not having a traditional power forward outside of Kyle Anderson. It puts them in an awkward in between
Yeah.
with those types of guys. There's no like natural fit outside of like a Kyle Anderson. So then it just looks a little clunky sometimes. It's like, well, we don't have the perfect guy out here to guard Zion. These guys are too small. Cat's a little too like slow footed. And that's just you're just kind of left in between a lot.
Yeah. No, you put it right. It's like the Wolves don't have a four.
Right.
Like, and so to that end, the matchup there, or in their starting lineup, right? I mean, how would you go about guarding Zion tonight?
I mean, I think you and I
So
talked
does
about.
Carl.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would just stick with Carl. Like even like Julius Randle, it is some tougher shots and whatnot. Like and they're usually things you can live with. And yeah, they might go off, but like they're shots that you can live with in general, and it kind of keeps, if you're doing it right, you can keep your defensive integrity everywhere else. I'd probably go with Carl when he's out there on the court. I'd match his minutes with Kyle Anderson as much as physically possible. And then I don't know, like if I needed to stop at the end of the game, like you and I have touched on this, like just
Ant.
casually chatting, like Ant. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want Ant to sit there and have to like take the brunt of Julius Randle and Zion Williamson for 35 minutes. You know, like
But
it's
I don't mind him
undersized
guarding
body.
him the last like 40
Last
seconds of
5
the
minutes.
quarter.
Yeah, sure.
Like,
Yeah, right.
for
A
sure, the
one
last
possession.
possessions. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like it's gonna be like this ISO, like Ant's your biggest like physical
Mhm.
body who loves just like absorbing the hit, you know,
Right.
like and bodying you up like that in like key situations. I would say for sure
Mhm.
would be Ant would be your best one to stand up physically and kind of stonewall these guys. Frankly, like he's just like
Yeah.
he's got the best body for it.
I think like an argument against it being Carl or another disadvantage for the Wolves against big teams is I think it's more likely that Carl gets in foul trouble, right?
Yeah,
He's guarding Zion Williamson, right? I mean, I don't know. More likely than not, Carl will go to the bench at some point tonight with foul trouble due to his matchup and other elements of his game. And I don't know. I think if the Jokic thing the Wolves do, where they put Carl on Jokic and have Rudy double, we think that's going to now work against a lot of others. And I
right.
think that like
They're different players.
there's such different players, and Aaron Gordon, who Rudy's lurking off of in that situation, is such a different player than Isaiah Hartenstein for the Knicks or Jonas Valanciunas for the Pelicans. And I
If
think
you think about it, like Gordon is closer to like and he's not the same offensive player, but like if like say when he was in Orlando or something, he was closer to a Julius Randle than
No,
those other guys.
exactly. It's I think, and I went like hand raised, went into the Denver series, disagreed with that strategy of putting Carl on Jokic. I didn't think that was the right idea. It was, and if the Wolves play the Nuggets in the playoffs again this year, I'll say that's what they should do because we've seen that have success in the playoffs and in the regular season. But I think, and obviously this could just be overreaction of the moment of the Julius Randle had a really good game against Carl, but I don't think that should be the go-to. In my opinion, I don't think that should be the go-to matchup there. I know we talked to, Rudy and Finch about this at practice yesterday, and they're like, it's actually we're guarding this guy with 5 players and all that, and I get that, and maybe they need to get back to some more of that. But yeah, in the starting lineup, not that Carl's having a bad defensive year, but he's probably your 5th best defender
Right.
in the starting lineup.
Yeah, I'm not
And
trashing Carl when I'm saying that. It's just
yeah,
you
no,
have 4 good defensive players.
he's having his
around him.
best defensive year of his
Right.
career. And I think about that. I get all that. I'm just being honest. When there's any game and I go down and I write down what my matchups are for the beginning of the game and I go, okay, Carl on Giannis. Okay, Carl on Zion. Okay, Carl. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know. I think that they're still figuring some of that stuff out. I think there'd be some advantages to have some more like congruency of like, okay, this is weird. Now Gobert guarded Sabonis in this game, the primary big, or he guarded Embiid, the primary big in that game. It just feels like to me like a big shift then to have Carl guard Zion or Randall. So I don't know. Mostly what I'm saying is it's something to track. Right now, I think a disadvantage that this team has against big teams is when they have to guard a true scoring 4. And maybe that'll be prove out differently tonight. Maybe Carl will do a good job on Zion and Rudy will help there too. But that's what I have down for disadvantages versus a big team.
Yeah, I agree. And the Julius Randle thing, like I think he was not very good at target center, if I'm not mistaken. Like he's just kind of
Yeah.
He takes a lot of tough shots and sometimes going to make them and a lot of times going to miss them. And like
Mhm.
it's such a volume game for him. So like I don't read too much into that one, but like the Zion game stuck out from the Pelicans in New Orleans.
Yeah.
and we'll see if that happens again tonight. If there's like more data, then that would give you an even better idea, frankly, of like whether something will or won't work. But I just think like, what would your plan be for Zion in terms of like when it is Rudy and Carl? Because if you put Rudy on Zion, like Valanciunas is not a good matchup for Cat either.
Yeah.
Super physical. Like he's
I mean,
bothered
but
with his
that's what
physicality in the
we're
past.
choosing a less bad matchup for Carl. I don't know. I mean, at least Carl has guarded Valanciunas before.
Yeah, it's just
Probably
like
more. He's guarded an offensive rebounding 5 more than he's defended
I don't
a
think it's
scoring
gone
5.
well for Carl in the past when he guards Valanciunas. Just trying to think back in my mind, because like those Memphis games and whatnot, like they did not go very well because
Yeah.
Valanciunas would
That's
dominate those matchups generally. And then if you're Zion pulling Rudy away, too, like now it's kind of jeopardizing the entire defense and your scheme.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think that this is a tough one in general.
Yeah,
And like
it
we
is.
said, we could get in the afternoon, like Zion's out. And it's like, well, this is a fun conversation for future games. But
But it could be the playoff matchup. That's
no,
what I've been
right,
thinking
right.
about.
No,
Like,
I
it
agree.
could easily be the first round playoff matchup
Yeah, it's
or
something to watch.
whatever.
So it's another one of those where it's like, please just play Pelicans. Like even if
Yeah.
you're on the second half of back to back, just play so we can
Right.
learn things and have an enjoyable matchup. Like
Right.
at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if the Timberwolves are 25-8 and 24-9. Like, can you just give us something to watch that's like we can learn things from and is entertaining? But I think this is just a really hard one. They just don't have like a perfect like a Zion matchup, frankly. And you can't even say like Jaden, because that wouldn't work anyway physically, but somebody has to guard Ingram as well.
Hey, I'm not actually against just that either. That might be in the moment right now. What my answer is I'd throw a lot of different things at Zion.
Sure.
I think I would throw Jaden at him at times. I'd throw Cat at him. I'd throw Rudy. I'd throw Ant. I think that would be my answer. Let me quickly, speaking of the Pelicans game, and I forgot to mention this, so this is going to be a very last minute thing, but we have 2 tickets to give away from the Genesis company to tonight's game against the Pelicans. So once this posts and you are hearing and listening to this ad break, reach out and send us a message at patreon.com/@DaneMooreNBA. It is our way of thanking you guys for listening. It's the turn of the new year. I didn't look at the January tickets yet, so please, we're going to send somebody to the game tonight. So right now, pause the podcast and request or put your name in the mix, and I'll pick somebody tonight. At last minute, we'll get you there to the game. We have a bunch of tickets to give away through the month of January, and we're giving those away to Patreon subscribers. Patreon.com/DaneMooreNBA.
Your chances of getting them have never been higher.
No, literally,
Probably.
literally, you should. There's going to be a short window here. Now watch. Now everyone's going to get aggressive. Everyone's going to go over there. And if you are not going to the game tonight at Target Center via these tickets or otherwise, Always Falling Knife Brewing Company, an option for the games. Also wanted to let you know that like on Sundays for the Vikings games, I know they had that going last weekend. They will again this weekend. I think they play the Lions. Rectangle Pizza. It's a place that we would like for you guys to try out. Obviously for Wolves games nights, that's probably the most fun. Tonight, I think against the Pelicans will be great. But just keep it in mind in your work happy hour, just friends on a Saturday, and you're wanting to go to a brewery, Keep Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis on the top of your mind. All right, Chase, let's keep going. I promise we will eventually get to a point of the podcast where we can talk about Jordan McLaughlin, but let's do advantages and disadvantages versus small teams first here. Let's do advantages against a small team. Again, this is more like the Kings, Thunder, Mavericks type teams that they've played recently. The first thing I've written down, or you want to go first? I feel like I've been talking for a long time. Doing that a lot today, apparently.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, I have a couple things down, but I do think that first and foremost, it is just like it's general. Like when you do it right, you can use advantage of your size so much in terms of like on the glass or like Rudy duck-ins, like Carl versus Carl on the post if the other team isn't doubling right away, like easy buckets there. Like I just think on the interior, there's so many forms of whether it's putbacks, like feeding Rudy on lobs, feeding Rudy on seals, like whatever. Like a lot of easy offense can come and it's kind of like the demoralizing thing, I think, for the opponent, where it's like, what are we even supposed to do
Yeah,
here?
I agree with that.
I don't think that the Wolves always execute it correctly, like just get enough of it, like take advantage of it enough on a game-to-game basis. But I think like over the course of a series or something, like they would find a lot of those matchup advantages and expose them. And I just think like their size can be a real problem, for sure, on the offensive end of the floor.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about over the course of a series, right? Where you go, yeah, I could see the Wolves against a small team becoming problematic on the offensive glass, right? But they're not a great offensive rebounding team. Like they're
Right.
20th in offensive rebounding. But I'm with you. Like I could see that.
It's such a team where it's intentional. It's like, what are they intentional about doing on a night-to-night basis? And a lot of times it's not, they're just not intentional on certain details on a matchup to matchup. But I think over the course of a series, they would get that coached into them.
And also to that end, I mean, you're playing a small team. It's going to be double central on Cat in the post.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, can Carl and the rest of the group be intentional about breaking that, An advantage versus a small team should be that the Wolves make a bunch of threes because the lane is going to be packed, doubling Carl, loading up on Ant, bringing the tag man in for Rudy, whatever. Like the perimeter should be very open. I wouldn't say the Wolves are great at executing at this right now. I wouldn't say the Wolves are a great 3-point shooting team. But again, in kind of the same vein as the offensive rebounding, if the Wolves had a 7-game series against a small team, I think they would find ways to take advantage of the 3-point line because the opponent would be. I don't think you could just go against the Wolves and be like, all right, boxes and elbows, we're packing it into the paint for 7 games, and we're going to beat the Wolves. Like I do think Finch and this Wolves team is talented enough offensively to kind of figure that out, even if those aren't like the things that this Wolves team is great at in the macro this season.
Yeah, and like it's almost like a game one thing. Like if Carl got the ball in the post and the team wasn't committed to doubling, and then he scores a lot in game two, then if they're sending instant doubles, they may after the first quarter they'd be like, we're not doing that anymore. We're just going to pull them out, and those types of things, those quick adjustments that are generally pretty easy to make. I think that a small team, just like I just can never get that last year's Thunder playing game out of my head. Like of like, wow, they're just physically just bigger and stronger, and like that matters. It matters maybe more in the playoffs than it does any other time when you can be even more physical. I just think that should be what it turns into. Like, would it? I don't know, but that should be how it would play out.
Did you see any of the Thunder Celtics game last night?
A little bit.
That was awesome. And I was like kind of working on this while I was watching that, and I'm like, and I wrote out the Thunder game thing and offensive pass. I'm like, oh man, I don't know. This Thunder team might just be different now, though. Like,
they are. They are.
And obviously they are. But even to that point, like, I'm not even saying it's just Chet. It's like Jalen Williams looks like he weighs 18 pounds more than he did in the playoff game.
Finally got an NBA offseason.
True.
That matters a lot. I mean, I just look at OKC and Boston, and I'm like, these two teams look very similar. Like they just, like personnel wise, they just look the same. Like I know that they have different guys and obviously levels of experience, and the players aren't the exact same. Like Jason Tatum isn't Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but you just look across the board and it's like they're constructed in such a similar way.
And stylistically, how they play, like, I mean, I've never seen a basketball game that was more intentionally spread and drive and kick.
Right.
And it was like pretty too. And they're moving the ball on the perimeter really well. Also, both have coaches in their 30s, I think, right? It's Dagnall like late 30s, maybe 40 or something like that. And Zula's like 35. Yeah, it was an interesting. Damn God, I watched that last night. But I was thinking, I was like, okay, I always say this is an advantage against small teams. Is the playing game against the Thunder where they killed them because of the
and that's where the Thunder isn't the same thing anymore, but
they were just so small. But it still is.
It still should be. Yeah.
No, you said the 7-game thing. I agree with that. Yeah. Like it would be a point of intention. And I think this team, when Finch is like, this is what we have to like
and it's the same thing.
Yes.
Every single game. Like I really think that.
The last thing I have on that, and is just like looking at the stats, they get to the free throw line a ton against small teams. I guess that's intuitive, but also for a below average offensive team like the Wolves, being able to get to the free throw line, getting Ant to the free throw line in particular, I think that's typically who it is, right? It's going and attacking the rim and not having, a lot of resistance there, I think leads to probably I'm more foul, so that's another advantage versus a small thing. Team, want to move over to disadvantages?
Sure. Wait, I think I
go,
had
okay.
my other advantage was
Yep.
like, and this doesn't always play out in terms of like we've seen obviously some guys like SGA and Fox have big games and whatnot, but I can't get over the fact that like smaller teams, they're probably led by guards, and like
Yeah.
that should feed into Minnesota's best perimeter defenders. Like, I mean, they've got so many bodies that they should be able to throw into. It doesn't always bear out,
True.
but I just think matchup wise, like we talk about how big teams can play through their like a Zion type guy, and now you're going at Cat. Like if you're playing through your wings, like Minnesota is built with Ant, especially like a playoff defense level Ant and Jaden and then Nikhil. Like you have so many different options of guys. Like they should be having to face a lot of resistance, those guys, on a night-to-night basis with Rudy lurking in the back. Like
no, this is a good one. We would have put this on there if Jaden was having a better season.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And I still think like there's still such a long season to go. Like where Jaden will be come April, who knows? Like he could easily be back to like, wow, you can't score on this guy.
Yeah, just because I guess side tangent. What's your like 1 to 10 concern level on Jaden stuff? Because I'm just reading emails and stuff like that, and it's I've gotten like 6 or 7. Should have they done the contract extension?
Sure.
I'm not even trying to make fun of the people. Like people,
yeah.
That because obviously my opinion is yes, and I think it was a good rate there. I do recognize though Jaden has been the most like disappointing element of this season, I guess, in a really awesome year. I guess I'm still just in my head assuming it's going to get better. I reference the 3 different injuries he's had in the past couple of months. I don't know. Sorry, do you?
We see missed training camps. Missed training camps do matter. I mean, they really like they impact people. Think of how bad, Carl looked at the beginning of last year and whatnot. Like it matters
Rudy
to miss.
Too,
yeah, it matters to like miss training camp or have it severely impacted. So
Rubio, remember when Rubio came back, how slow he looked.
Yes,
and that's because he missed training camp there too.
Yes, yep. It looked like he was not an NBA player. I mean, it really didn't. It matters a lot, and and so now we're 32 games into the season, but like it might not be until February where you're like, oh, okay, Jaden looks like he's coming into form. I still head into every matchup being like, well, they have Jaden for this guy. So mentally, like I haven't even adjusted much, even though then every result comes at night and I'm like, not Jaden dominant, but I think it's going to come over time. I really do. I really do kind of write off like missing time with injuries and whatnot, missing training camps.
I just get the sense, and then like, nobody, I don't know this, but I like get the sense that there's just nagging little injury stuff. Not that like is close to needing him to miss time. I just feel like the slight levels of discomfort I see him playing with. I also randomly see him wearing a different pair of like shoes every practice or game or something. And that's not always the case. That's oftentimes like a player breaking in different pairs of shoes. But a lot of the time, remember Jeff Teague? He was like, he's like, there's only one pair of shoes I can play in anymore that like actually make my foot feel like it, can work. And I've always kind of stored that in my head.
Looking for answers.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe it's even just psychological, right? And that wouldn't totally surprise me with Jaden either. But I don't know. I just do not have like alarm bells going off in my head about Jaden McDaniels. Just like it's got to get better. I think it can get better. And I think once it starts getting better, he'll stop being so angry, and that often, makes him play better. But
it is funny, like, it's not like it's been that bad, from him,
no.
either. And honestly, like if you didn't have like the juxtaposition of like what Nickeil Alexander-Walker does, like if there was no Nickeil Alexander-Walker in the past, and it's like in past years, it was like when Jane wasn't out there, they didn't have anybody. And it was like, wow, they are bad defensively when he's not on the court. And now there's somebody else where it's like, oh, he's a great defender too, So now it's like, oh, is he defending better than Jaden? What's wrong with Jaden? It's like Nikhil's just really good defender too. So if Jaden isn't at his peak, then like it can, in comparison, be like makes Jaden look worse than it would have in the past because any Jaden would have been better than no Jaden.
Still, we were looking this up together the other day. Still 96th percentile in defensive estimated plus minus.
Still really good. Like it can be worse than the guy subbing in for you, but it can be really good.
Yes, exactly. So okay, good. I'm glad we touched on that a little bit. That's definitely a message I've seen a lot more in the last 10 days is, to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
fair, like as the Wolves and Finch said yesterday at practice, the Wolves have kind of settled into a little bit more of being an average team the past few weeks.
Yes. Yep.
So what do we do? What do fans do? Look and be like, wait, what could be better? Jaden McDaniels is for sure an answer there. Okay, last thing, disadvantages versus small teams. You want to start with one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's just like the 5-out. I'm still not convinced as to how they would defend 5-out offense, like on a night to night basis, because sometimes it looks okay. And it's always like, well, the other teams did miss some shots there. And I understand that a lot plays into that. But there are some nights these teams generate decent looks either way, and out of the 5-out more often than they do out of other offensive constructs. That's just the one that I feel like they can least impose themselves defensively.
Sure.
For whatever reason. I think it's just because there's always going to be some matchup you can attack, or some like safety valve that you can release the ball to that takes off the pressure that Minnesota had been applying throughout the possession. So that's my biggest thing is like, I don't feel like they can be the best defense in the NBA against a 5-out offense.
Yeah, nope. I had that down too. Just in general, the idea of kind of pulling Rudy a little ways away from the basket when he is such an instrumental layer of help to any angle of the floor where it's coming from there. And when the guy Rudy is guarding is not in the dunker spot, but instead in the corner or above the break, it's just, for Rudy to be able to stay there, you are sacrificing that shot. And that's then it becomes this Porzingis hit 3 threes on Rudy or Miles Turner or Al Horford or whoever. To be able to maintain that integrity of your paint, you give that up to some extent. So that's for sure a disadvantage for this team. I also, and this is a little bit more recency bias, but playing against a switching defense, I think is a disadvantage for this team right now.
They never learned how to do it.
Yeah, right. And it bogs it down.
I was going back to even like last year when they were struggling with it and reading like Mike Conley giving quotes then of like, here's what we need to do. And they still don't do it. They don't move the ball enough. It's okay.
And that's what it does, man. I mean, that's what switching 5 does. That's the idea is you're like, yeah, we dare you to take this. We're switching this message here. We're bogging you down. We're trying to kill your ball movement and make your best player score on us.
Make the best player score and make everybody else feel like they're just not even in the game.
And that's something teams should be able to do, but it's easier. It is totally easier said than done because it kills ball movement and oftentimes leads to more turnovers. I think that's what the worst matchup for the Wolves. I don't even know what team it is, but the idea is that they can effectively switch 5 against the Wolves, and then that they can spread the floor. I think so. It's probably a small team that's a little bit more sturdy, so you can guard Cat in the post. They can't totally take advantage of that, or Rudy on the offensive glass. But yeah, this is there's holes to be poked in this team against a small but strong team, given what we've seen this year. I think particularly offensively against switching defenses and turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could like look up the quote, but Mike literally, it was like, we have to keep the ball moving, keep screening, keep like slipping some screens, because the biggest thing with switching defenses is to really test the communication, like on multiple actions over the same possession, because eventually they'll screw something up. Like if you slip a screen, that gets much more difficult against a switching defense. And if you're doing it multiple actions, like that was where the Clippers were switching everything in the playing game 2 years ago. And then there were a couple times like where Minnesota kept running actions on the perimeter, and then with like 5 minutes left, and had like this thunderous dunk where like the seas parted because the Clippers messed up a communication. That doesn't happen if you just want to run one screen and roll to start the possession and then just ISO it up for 20 seconds.
That's a good point. You got to go and go and go.
Yeah. That was like listening to Mike say that. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. It's like you run 6 things and eventually they're going to break down, because it's hard to consistently switch every single thing with not doing the exact same slow pick and roll over and over again. That's how you test them and kind of find the little cracks in them. But Minnesota, just too often, it's like a settle. It's like, okay, here's what we wanted, and then that's it.
I think I'm excited for the Wolves to play the Clippers in the regular season.
That'll be interesting
to see it. That's probably, if I had to pick right now, probably the worst matchup, I think. But I think
which is funny because it's been a good matchup in the past, because Ant and Jaden do generally give like Paul George and Kawhi some trouble because they really get up for those matchups.
I think it's just me being, and I think they probably will. I think Ant and Jaden would do that. I think it's the.
But now you've got
defensive
James
idea.
Harden, and now you've
Mhm.
got, like you've got a lot of different things.
Yeah, and I need to watch more of the Clippers and everything there too. But the one thing against the Clippers or against any team like that I think is a disadvantage right now, but Carl could turn it into a strength, is being guarded and doubled by small teams. You know, I get when he's being guarded by Julius Randle, who's kind of just bigger and stronger than him, that he can't get that position deep there. But if they are playing the Clippers or whatever, just some random small team that you want to beat during the regular season, it needs to be like, well, what it is it's like you've started the possession and you've already got your switch, right? You've already ran. Carl's come up for Ant, and you've already got your switch. Like, you don't even need that. He's already got a small on him. And as you know, Nas often does, to be fair, against like second unit smalls who switch onto him, he rolls him into the post and takes advantage of it there. That would be completely critical and necessary for Cat to do if the Wolves did play the Clippers or a smaller team in the playoffs, is be able to take advantage of that. And whether that's just scoring against a smaller player or navigating passing against double teams against smaller players, it is an absolute must, I think, for this team to beat that team. And it's not something he's been good at recently, or in the past few years, but it has to be. I think it can't be a disadvantage versus a small team that Carl is being guarded by a small four. That can't be a disadvantage. And if it is, they're going to lose the series.
Yeah, there's two things. Like with the double, it's just too slow because he's always looking to pass to an assist. I mean, he wants to pass to the open guy who's going to score. Where it's just like sometimes just get it out, and then the next guy can, and then we can go around the horn, and the defense is already shifting and scrambling back. And somebody's going to end up with an open
kick out, reseal.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yep. And then it's that. So it's like just make the easy pass. Don't look for like the who's wide open, who am I going to get assist to here, like a corner three on the opposite corner or a cutter. Like just get it out. And then we can attack from there, and against in an advantageous position because they're kind of broken down already. And then the other thing is like with the post ups, and I know you mentioned like how far out he starts his post ups sometimes and whatnot, and he can't get position. I mean, this goes back to Tibbs. Like they have tried for years to get him to get down the court earlier. So it's fine to be a trailer sometimes. That's been like an advantageous position. But in other matchups, like when there's a small on you or something, get down faster, and it's so much easier to get better position if you are not like running into the guy who's waiting for you at the perimeter. Like bust your butt down the court, get that early position, and offense becomes 10 times easier if you are in a good spot on the floor.
I think he's going to do it. I think
so.
I really do. I think like last quartile of the season. No, both of these things. I think he's going to start posting up deeper, and I think he's going to go to the corner because I think Finch at some point is going to have a sit down with him, and he's waiting for the time for that of when it becomes an absolute must. Because you're any scout watching these games, you go, why the hell is Carl never in the corner? Why is Carl taking 2 corner threes this season? Why is Carl not deeper in there? And at some point, it is a conversation that has to be had. And I think it's difficult to have that conversation to a really intense degree right now. One, because this team is winning.
Yeah.
And 2, because Carl's already made so much sacrifice for this team and does. And I'm not brushing that off. Moving to the 4, playing with Rudy, ceding power to Ant, all of that. Like Carl has done that. He has to get deeper post ups, and he has to play out of the corner sometimes. And Chris Finch, I think, will find a way, because I actually believe in Finch's ability to do this. Like
portray messaging,
portray messaging, and maybe over the course of time do it. I think so, man, because I think this team's good, and I think at some point Finch goes, an absolute necessity from going from good to great is Carl doing those 2 things, and the corner spacing you can for sure do. The posting up stuff is about playing stronger, being stronger, and doing that. And Carl can do that too. I think it's going to happen. I really do.
I don't doubt that it would happen for a stretch of games. I just think when somebody has been asked to do some of these things, like the deep positioning his entire career, and it hasn't happened because it takes a lot of work. to be on the defensive end and run down and get
Mhm.
better position and do that possession after possession after possession. I think it's something maybe you can do for like 5 games after you have a sit down, but are you still doing it 15 games after the sit down? Are you doing
Yeah.
it, so for me, if I would deliver that message like 2 games before the playoffs started, honestly, like I would be like, there's 15 games of the regular season. I can't waste it right now because it might peter out again, because like at some point you just kind of revert to your tendencies. And if your tendencies have never been to do that, and you've had success doing other things, even if they aren't as successful now,
Can you make it a tendency in the regular season? I think that's
then why would you wait until later? If you're trying to make it a tendency in the regular season, why would you wait until later?
Yeah, and I think they are trying. I think there's just like there's a handful of different things offensively right now.
Yeah.
Can Ant settle back into a little bit more of a playmaking mode? Can they move the ball better? Can the spacing in the Kyle lineup? There's a handful of offensive issues right now that are bigger than Carl playing in the corner.
Yeah. Oh wait,
like this is not the top of the importance list. It will be important against a small team in a playoff series. Those things have to happen.
I think people there's often this thing like, you guys hate Ant or whatever, like, because it can be like he'll score like 14 in the first quarter and it's like, that's great. Nobody else got involved in the offense at all. And then it just leads to like the sticky basketball because it was sticky all the whole first quarter and it's hard to reverse course. And like, if you bring that up during the game, people are like, he's the only one doing anything. It's like, I'm just telling you like what I'm seeing. And then like Chris Finch after the games and the next day of practice is like, yeah, we have no ball. I don't care if you score 14 in the first quarter or 6. I would like to get everybody involved in the action because the things you're doing in the first will be there later. Like, let's make everybody feel involved here. I just think they've got to move the ball more. And those are the things like you worry about that in the playoffs. We worry about that against switching defenses. We worry about that every day. Like you're fighting your tendency to not want to move the ball, to not trust that the ball is going to come back to you in a more advantageous position 10 seconds later in the shot clock. These are things that like Britt brought it up. He's like, and Cat and Ant can even be more effective if the ball is moving, right? Like, I'm assuming that's something you're harping on. And Finch is like, every day, wish you could be at our film sessions. We're talking about it every single day. Like these are the things with their offense. It's like, that's got to become second nature.
Right. I have that clip here. I'll play that. This is Finch at practice yesterday.
So yeah, I think we need to kind of get the ball moving again, get back to having more structure, better spacing. A lot of our turnovers are result into poor spacing right now. A lot of that poor spacing is a result of people just holding, indecision, not knowing what your teammate's going to do with the ball, and now you start like kind of milling around.
So lack of ball movement and poor shot selection seems to contribute to just about everything.
Yeah.
I mean, like the rebounds.
No doubt about it, yeah. We don't get offensive rebounds. Transition defense gets exposed a little bit. All that kind of stuff. So.
And you preach this, obviously.
Every day.
And film
you should come to film. You should come to film. Yeah, we've spent a large part of this season, like, fighting the defense a bit, not playing with enough, kind of just trust in what we're doing and taking what the defense is giving us. We need those guys to do what they do well. We need Ant to be an ISO scorer. We need Cat to be a tough cover at all different levels of the floor. But we don't need them to do it every single time down. And they have to have the burden of creating good offense for themselves, for their teammates, and for each other. So, and we have not been able to strike that balance consistently yet. Until we do, we're not going to take a step forward.
That's a great answer. And it's also why, and sometimes, and whatever, this is fine, and it happens on Twitter or Reddit or whatever, but I've never found my personal disagreements with Finch being that big, it's certainly not to the extent of being like, oh no, this isn't the right coach for the job. And I think part of the difference is I hear him saying those things every day at practice and, post game and all this sort of stuff. Like, I think Finch is very aware of the task at hand. I think he very much knows these things have to happen to be a good, great team. And they're kind of trying to, plug the one hole and then another water spurt is going to come out elsewhere. But I think Finch is just like, one thing at a time. Can we get ball movement back? Okay. Can we get that? Like, it's going to be a progression, and it's why it's nice that there's 45, 50 games left in the season. It's so critical to figure out the answers to these things over the course of the season, kind of one at a time. So you know what those answers are when it's presented to you in a playoff series.
I think we just underestimate how much a coach is fighting against the human nature of players. Right? Like they are constantly like getting the messages of like, here's winning basketball, here's good basketball. Like think of like who's won the last couple titles, like Golden State and Denver. Like how have they, like their offenses? It's so like it's movement based, it's making the right play again and again and again, like and that's the hardest to defend in the playoffs. I mean, I cannot overstate enough. Like watching Kobe Bryant talk about the easiest thing to do is just to defend a pick and roll because I know what you're going to do and I know where you're going, and that's the easiest thing that we can do. Like it's movement, it's making the right decision, it's multiple actions. Like how do you get into that? And like it's just not the second nature of like a cat, an ant, those types of things. So they've had success doing it, the isolation way for their entire careers. Ant scores a lot now. It's just like, is that the best for the team's offense? Like. Sometimes it looks like not. And the human nature part is like they were doing really well. Like Ant was doing a really good job making decisions, and then they lose one game to OKC.
Yeah, his best game was arguably the Kings game right before that.
Yes, yep. And then they lose one game in OKC, and he gets it in his head. He said it afterwards. I left bullets in the chamber. Like I didn't shoot enough. I didn't score enough. If I would have scored more, we would have won that game. It's like that's not why you lost that game, but that's what's in his head. He's like, that's what I could have done more. And so every game since then, he's making sure that he's not leaving shots on the table. And they've had some arguably like he's posted good numbers, but they've had arguably some of their worst team offense.
Yeah.
Since then. So it's like constantly like trying to reset. It's like, that's not what we need. That's not like the best basketball for us, like, and now it's like getting back into it. Okay, remember, here's what we want. Here is what's good for you and everybody else, but it's constantly like, as a coach, the problem's never solved. Like you're always kind of working at, just chipping away at it, trying to ingrain into here's what we need. Here's what's best for this team.
A small answer to that, and just like getting a couple more small things to work in terms of ball movement and offense overall, a small thing that could contribute to that. And you wrote about it yesterday. It's kind of been the topic du jour for the last 48 hours is Jordan McLaughlin. And well, first of all, I just should start by playing the clip that said that Finch is basically, going to play JMac. This is what Finch
you
said
talked last game after the game last night about how JMac has kind of really like made an impression. And how do you make decisions on when to alter the rotation in a meaningful and like long-term way in terms of how you guys are playing?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, JMac's getting to the point where he's going to grab the spot, and we'll see what he can do. But we still have three different guards who have three different skill sets, so we're still going to leave ourselves the flexibility to maybe go a different direction.
Is kind of one of the big things for him just the way that he injects pace but also doesn't turn the ball over? I mean, it seems like he does a pretty good job at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the turnovers. I mean, it's like he makes the system go. He does all the things we know JMac can do, and we thought and still believe at times that, both Shake and Troy could give us other dimensions. And so, yeah, like sometimes you just got to cycle through this stuff, yeah.
Jace, what impact do you think it would have having Jordan McLaughlin in the line? And maybe the answer is not that big if it's just for like 13 minutes a game.
Right.
But also sometimes it can be if you have one person doing the things that this team, any team needs, even if it's just like a couple morsels of that. I think we've seen that previously with this team or other teams. It kind of then transcends. Seems like you're kind of in the mindset that plugging JMac in has a chance to be able to do that. That's how I feel too.
I don't know if it is a team overhaul. I like to think in my mind that if you have somebody go in there for 8 minutes or whatever, and he is injecting pace and ball movement in, that it's infectious and it carries over. And I tend to believe that can be true. And then I think the New York game, and when he subbed out, it went total isolation heavy. Awful basketball for the last 5 minutes, and they hardly scored. So like, I don't know. I think it can carry out, but and I know that obviously gets into clutch time too, and you're trailing, and then that's when like the worst tendencies tend to come out in guys.
Sure.
But I think in general, like if with the bench unit can have more pace, then that's easier and movement, then that's easier for the starters who finish the second quarter or whatever, or come back in the fourth to maintain versus having to establish it on their own when sometimes the second unit, because of spacing or whatever, we're having a difficult time generating good offense.
Yeah, I also think just from Finch's answer there, it sounds like it's gonna be JMac, but not with any plan of necessary permanence.
Right. There's no long term there. Like it was for now.
Yeah. And I think it probably is that until the trade deadline, right?
Yeah.
Where in theory you bring someone in to be that ninth guy or to replace somebody that's already in the rotation, and that kind of gets it. I think they're trying to figure out for now in this iteration of this roster what this team needs, who that ninth man will be. And right now, JMac makes a lot of sense for that, given what this team isn't doing in that they're turning the ball over so often. The pace isn't there. I thought it was interesting yesterday when the first thing that Rudy brought up about Jordan McLaughlin was toughness.
Yeah, right.
And unselfishness. And he said that all the things we need right now. And yeah, I don't know. It seems like a stretch to assume that this minimum level contract backup point guard could come in and have a profound impact on the group overall. And I'm not saying I'm betting on that, but I could see it happening because it does feel like exactly what this team needs. Maybe it was an oversight to go into the season without a backup point guard plan. Like there's enough things together. It's like, okay, if JMac checks like these 5 or 6 boxes in a minimal role, it might have a big impact. But you're right. It certainly didn't stay that way after JMac checked out of the game for the last 5 minutes of the Knicks game. So, we'll see. And I think that's where Finch is at with it too. Like, we'll see. It's playing for now.
Yeah, and I still think like there are some games where like the opposing bench or whatever is just too big where they just don't feel like they want to go to JMac. And maybe they'll go 8 that game. Maybe they'll give Troy Brown some minutes. I just don't think it's like a lock that every single night JMac will be out there. But I do think just like that's the base plan. Regardless of opponent right now, the base plan is for JMac to be that ninth guy.
Yeah.
However many minutes that equals on any given night. And ninth spots are fluid on a lot of teams.
Right.
Like that's not an uncommon type of thing.
And it seems like we're making such a big deal out of the ninth spot, the smallest role on the team, but it's like, man, that bench just feels like it needs something a little bit different.
Yeah,
maybe it can happen in
a little juice, a little burst, like whatever. Yeah. Like I thought Finch, it was like, I was like, does this kind of have to do with just the team's deficiencies too, as much as how JMac is playing when he comes in? And it's like, he's like, I can't ask Troy Brown Jr. to make threes if we're not moving the ball.
Right.
So it's like JMac, he's like in his own way can more than like a Shake or a Troy can generate good offense on his own. Like he can be a solution for that. Like he literally with the ball in his hands and the way he plays does kind of himself create good offense, and they just need good offense as many minutes as possible right now because that has been where they have deteriorated probably the most just in recent games.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up by just talking about the Pelicans game briefly. I want to do that. We can kind of do that while mixing in our prize picks segment here. I was looking up prizepicks.com, prize picks app, promo code Dane if you want to play along with us. I always feel like these numbers are interesting in that they paint the public perception, right? They're trying to nail the middle of it. One I noticed here was Jaden McDaniels, his more or less than for this game against the Pelicans tonight is 2.5 rebounds. And it's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, Jaden McDaniels needs to have more than 2.5 rebounds in this game. And I think he will, but it's like, there's a reason they're setting that there. That's something Jaden hasn't been doing. And I think it's something Jaden absolutely has to do against a big team. Like, let's assume that Cat is guarding Zion and Gobert is guarding Valanciunas. Well, then when it is Valanciunas or Zion scoring, like then Jaden becomes a help defender. Jaden becomes a weak side rebounder, those sort of things. So that was the one that stood out to me most was Jaden McDaniels more than 2.5 rebounds in this game. And then also because it's been a trend of late, Anthony Edwards' turnover number is at 3.5. And I said I'll take more than 3.5 turnovers for Ant in this game, just given how the offense has been recently. But just give me your general thoughts about this matchup and maybe who on the Wolves can most sort of benefit from this matchup against the Pelicans. Ant's number is 28.5 points. Jade McDaniel's number is 11.5 points. Towns 21.5 points. Mike Conley 11.5. Rudy Gobert 13.5. Who do you think this is a good matchup for?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to comment on the Jaden rebounds. Like the last 4 games, 1 rebound, 3 rebounds, 0 rebounds, 1 rebound.
Yeah, no,
so like it's not a crazy number at all.
No,
like
it feels crazy though.
Yeah, it does. It's like, oh, he'd have more than that. Frankly, like just the way he's played recently, like 28.5 for Ant feels like a number that you would go over because he's consistently doing that.
Sure.
Just like in the way he is playing right now, and the way he's attacking and just how aggressive he's been, I would take over on that for Ant every time right now until there's like a shift in what they do.
We're assuming the trend is what you said, bullets in the chamber, and he's going to continue doing that. I believe he's going to continue doing that. I think Finch and others are going to try and, maybe move him off that a little bit. But since he said it after the Thunder game, dude's been gunning, and to that end, I think and he can score them. He absolutely can. I have zero doubt about Anthony Edwards' ability to get 30 in any matchup. The only question is, can he get that 30 in a way that is beneficial to the other 4 players around him on the floor? But for this, it's like I probably would say Ant more than 28.5 points in that one. I guess I didn't really look up what the
they don't have Pelicans. They don't have numbers. They don't know who's playing.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I mean, God, if Zion is playing, I don't know. I don't know what the number would have to be for me to not take the over on Zion in this matchup.
I think his numbers are usually in like the low 20s too. So like,
I mean
22.5 or something like that.
And and hopefully the Wolves do have an answer for that, or maybe it's a little bit different than Randall or not. But this is what we're kind of talking about, right? But we're going off of trends of what this team has been recently, and that's why the rebound number for Jaden is so low. That's why the turnover number for Ant is so high. His points are high, maybe should be higher. Like this is the cool part I think about NBA, daily fantasy is. If you're really paying attention, I think you can have a little bit of an advantage. You're not going to hit these all perfectly, but for people who are caring and watching this team, I think this is a fun thing to be able to do. Or disagree with the trends that we're talking about. Be like, oh no, it's going to be Cat, and Cat's going to have 30 tonight. The number's 21.5 for him. Like that might be
like feel like, oh, Herb Jones would be on Ant, and then then it's a Cat matchup. That type of thing.
Yeah. PrizePicks.com, PrizePicks app, promo code Dane for a $100 sign-up bonus. I'm interested by this game tonight. I think the Pelicans are like as big of a team as anybody in the NBA. I think we think they aren't because CJ McCollum's on the team. And you're like, oh, he's like a small 2, but their one Conley is like Herb Jones. Right. It's they are. Bi is huge at the 3. And they have the offensive rebounding force at the 5. This lineup tests, I think the Pelicans lineup tests their disadvantages against a big team as much as any does, with the Zion at the 4, Carl guarding him, JV at the 5. Yeah, it's a big team, and the Wolves are a big team too. They don't always play like it. To beat the Pelicans tonight, they'll have to play like it. Any just thoughts or prediction on the game?
Nope. Hope the Pelicans play. I thought the line was like 6.5 or something, which I was like, that could just literally be a back-to-back line. Just because, you don't have the exact same juice in the second half of a back-to-back as you do on the front end.
Right.
But it was big enough where I was like 4.5. I'd be like, that's just the back-to-back line. 6.5. I'm like, this Vegas thing, somebody's sitting.
Yeah. Or I think it's kind of like splitting it. I think if Zion is ruled out, it go to like 8.5 or something. Yeah. It's just, I hope they play too, because this is the 4th and final matchup against the Pelicans this year, right?
And we will have 0 if they don't play. We'll have 0 evidence of.
And then I'm going to be so pissed about that when we're like previewing a playoff series. If that happens, we'll be like, okay, Zion didn't play in this game. Zion goes for 39 or whatever he did in that one game, and Ant didn't play in that game because it was after the hip.
Yeah, that would be the ESPN graphic of like
Yeah.
Series breakdown. Wolves won the season series 3-1. I'd be like,
Yeah. Point differential is massive.
yeah, right.
Yeah. So okay, we'll hope that happens tonight. If y'all want to check out Jace's article, basically titled "It's JMac Time." What do we got here for Timberwolves? It's Jordan McLaughlin time. Is that up on the stage? No, there you go. So check this out. Jace, noted Jordan McLaughlin stan, wrote about Jordan McLaughlin and being a part of this Timberwolves rotation going forward. Pioneer Press. And obviously you can follow Jace on Twitter at Jace Frederick. Anything else, Jace?
No, thanks for letting me talk.
Yes. All right. We'll have Jace back next week. The plan tomorrow is Kyle's going to join me. We're going to kind of push Britt out for this week. He's writing tomorrow morning, and I have to record tomorrow morning. So I think no Britt pod this week, but Kyle and I will talk about the Pelicans game tomorrow morning. Until then, he's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.